In the cold blue glow of Laboratory Chamber 7, Dr. Elia Marquez watched the human skin sample through the magnification field. The dermal cells shimmered with a faint iridescence under the specialized lighting of the Aegis 9 research station. Located on the outer rim of the galaxy, this sprawling complex housed the Intergalactic Biomedical Research Initiative, a collaborative effort between 17 sentient species to advance medical knowledge across the known universe. Aaliyah adjusted her posture, feeling the familiar ache in her lower back. 3 years aboard the station, and she still wasn't fully acclimated to the slightly higher gravity. As the sole human representative in the tissue regeneration department, she carried not just her research responsibilities, but the weight of proving humanity's scientific relevance among far more advanced civilizations. Commencing Cellular Regeneration Trial 394B. She spoke clearly for the lab's recording system. Human epithelial tissue, standard damage protocol, no accelerants applied. Across the transparent workstation, her research assistant, Nixley, a Miran with translucent blue skin and 4 nimble arms, prepared the microlaser. The Miran's inner eyelids blinked sideways in acknowledgement. Applying controlled thermal damage in 3, 2, 1. Nixley's voice resonated with the characteristic dual-toned inflection of their species. The laser precision cut a perfect square millimeter of tissue. Under normal circumstances, even with the best regenerative technologies in the sector, a complete restoration would take days. But Aaliyah had staked her entire career on a hypothesis that many of her alien colleagues found absurd: that human tissue possessed regenerative capabilities that defied conventional biological parameters. "Oh, cellular activity readings active and stable," Nixley reported, their upper set of arms manipulating the holographic data displays, while the lower pair maintained the sample environment. Initiating standard observation protocol. Aaliyah nodded, but her dark eyes remained fixed on the sample. "Let's extend the observation window to 60 minutes. Nixley's head tendrils twitched, a sign of confusion in their species. "The standard protocol calls for—" "I know," Aaliyah interrupted, more sharply than intended. She softened her tone. "I have reason to believe we'll see anomalous behavior if we wait. Just trust me on this one." The Miran acquiesced with a slight bow, though their tendrils continued to twitch skeptically. 28 minutes later, it happened. The damaged tissue began to shimmer, with increased metabolic activity. Cell division accelerated beyond any logical rate, and before their astonished eyes, the perfect square of damaged tissue completely regenerated, not in days, not in hours, but in minutes. "That's impossible," Nixley whispered, all 4 hands frozen above their control panel. "No known species can—" "Humans can," Elia said, unable to keep the triumph from her voice. After 3 years of ridicule and skepticism, she finally had undeniable proof. "And this is just the beginning of what we can do." She didn't notice how Nixley's skin had paled to an almost white translucence, a sign of extreme alarm in Mirans. Nor did she see the assistant discreetly activate the laboratory's security protocol with a subtle gesture. Across the station, in a private chamber filled with holographic displays, Dr. Chinveros of the Vitrin species observed the experiment with calculated interest. His elongated fingers tapped a complex rhythm on the polished surface of his desk as he watched the cellular regeneration occur at impossible speeds. "How fascinating," he murmured to himself, his reptilian eyes narrowing. "Perhaps the Terrans aren't as primitive as we thought." He switched off the surveillance feed and encrypted the data he'd captured. There were certain parties in the black market pharmaceutical consortiums who would pay fortunes for such biological capabilities. Capabilities that could revolutionize medicine or, more profitably, weaponry. As Dr. Marquez celebrated her breakthrough, she remained unaware that she had just sparked a chain of events that would threaten not only her research, but potentially the safety of the entire station and beyond. The next morning, Elia was summoned to the administrative sector. The message that appeared on her personal terminal was terse. Immediate presence required in Council Chamber 3. Subject: Research Integrity Investigation. The words sent ice through her veins. Research integrity investigations were rare and severe, usually preceding termination of projects or, worse, expulsion from the station. She hurriedly collected her data crystals and straightened her regulation uniform before making her way through the station's gleaming corridors. Aegis 9 was a marvel of interspecies architecture, designed to accommodate the vastly different physiological needs of its diverse inhabitants. The ceilings soared nearly 15 meters high in public areas to accommodate the towering draconids, while smaller tunnels branched off for the diminutive Vex researchers. Environmental controls shifted subtly from sector to sector, creating invisible bubbles of varied atmospheric conditions. As Elia approached the administrative sector, the metallic walls gave way to living bioform structures, the preferred construction material of the station's primary funders, the Prill Collective. The walls seemed to breathe, contracting and expanding in slow, deliberate rhythms. Embedded lighting pulsed in patterns that the Prill claimed enhanced cognitive function, though to Elia, they merely induced mild headaches. Council Chamber 3 was a perfect hemisphere, its dome ceiling inscribed with the mathematical formulas that the Prill believed formed the foundation of universal law. Around a crescent-shaped table sat 5 figures, representatives of the station's governing scientific council. In the center position, Chairman Zoth of the Prill observed her with compound eyes that reflected her image in hundreds of tiny facets. To his right sat the Draconid representative, towering even while seated, scales shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated elevated alertness. To his left, the Mieran Elder's tendrils were held rigidly upright, a sign of formal disapproval. The fourth member, a quantum intelligence housed in a hovering metallic sphere, pulsed with rapid bursts of light as it processed data. The fifth seat held a humanoid figure with silver skin, a Vitran like Dr. Chin, though not Chin himself. Dr. Elia Marquez. Chairman Zoth's voice resonated with the distinctive clicking undertones of the Prill. You have been summoned regarding anomalous data patterns detected in your research yesterday at 1642 station time. Elia straightened her posture. If you're referring to my breakthrough in human tissue regeneration, I can explain. What you call a breakthrough, interrupted the Draconid representative. Our system's flagged as a statistical impossibility. The regeneration rate you documented exceeds known biological parameters by a factor of 73. The quantum intelligence flashed rapidly. Probability of natural occurrence, 0.027%. Probability of data manipulation or experimental contamination, 99.9973%. Elia felt heat rising to her face. With all due respect, your probability calculations are based on non-human biological parameters. Human physiology. Human physiology, the Mieran Elder interjected, tendrils now quivering, has been extensively studied for over a century by this collective. Your suggestion that we have somehow missed a regenerative capability of this magnitude is troubling. The Council has authorized a full investigation, Chairman Zoth continued. Your laboratory access has been temporarily restricted. A team of neutral observers will replicate your experiment under controlled conditions. And if they cannot replicate my results? Elia challenged, fighting to keep her voice steady. The Vitran representative spoke for the first time, voice smooth as liquid silver. Then the Council must consider whether Earth's continued participation in this initiative is productive. The implication was clear. If her results couldn't be verified, humanity might lose its place in the galaxy's most prestigious research collective. 3 centuries of careful diplomacy and scientific exchange, jeopardized because alien minds couldn't accept that humans might possess biological capabilities they didn't understand. I welcome the investigation, Elia said firmly. My research will withstand scrutiny because it's true. Human tissue regenerates at rates your models can't predict because your models are incomplete. Chairman Zoth's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement or annoyance. We shall see, Dr. Marquez. Until the investigation concludes, you will assist the verification team but perform no independent research. Dismissed. As Aaliyah left the chamber, her thoughts tumbled in disarray. She believed absolutely in her findings, had staked her career on them, but doubt crept in around the edges of her confidence. What if there had been contamination? What if some unknown factor had skewed her results? What if human regeneration truly was abnormal, not just unexplained by current science, but fundamentally wrong in some way? Lost in thought, she nearly collided with a tall figure rounding the corridor junction. Ah, Dr. Marquez. Dr. Chinveros smiled down at her, reptilian features arranged in an approximation of warmth that never quite reached his eyes. I heard about your situation with the council. Aaliyah stiffened. Chin was technically her superior in the department hierarchy, but she'd always felt uneasy around him. The veteran physician had come to Aegis 9 with impeccable credentials from the renowned Veteran Medical Academy. Yet something about his manner, too smooth, too calculated, set off warning signals. News travels fast, she replied neutrally. The council means well, but they can be rigid in their thinking, Chin said, falling into step beside her as she continued toward the residential sector. Perhaps I could offer some assistance with your verification trials. My lab has certain equipment that might help establish the validity of your findings. The offer seemed generous, but Aaliyah's instincts flared. Thank you, but I think it's best if I follow the council's protocols exactly. Any deviation might compromise the investigation. Of course, Chin nodded, his scale frills rippling in what Vitrans considered a gesture of understanding. Still, should you change your mind, my laboratory facilities are at your disposal. I find human physiology fascinating. Something in the way he emphasized the final word sent a chill down Aaliyah's spine. I'll keep that in mind, she said, then quickened her pace. If you'll excuse me, I need to prepare for tomorrow's verification trials. As she walked away, she could feel Chin's gaze following her, calculating and cold. Back in her quarters, Aaliyah paced the limited floor space, mind racing. The sparse room reflected the utilitarian approach of the station. A sleeping platform, hygiene unit, work terminal, and small food preparation area were all that the 3-meter by 4-meter space contained. The only personal touch was a small hologram of Earth's night side, the web of city lights tracing the familiar continents of home. She activated her secure terminal and began reviewing her experimental data again. The results were clear, repeatable, and legitimate. She was certain of it. Human tissue regeneration operated on principles that defied the standard biological models used by the galactic scientific community. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts, a message notification. She opened it to find an anonymous text communication. The Prill fear what they cannot control. What regenerates can also mutate. Watch your samples. Watch your back. Not all eyes on this station belong to friends. Aaliyah stared at the message, her heart pounding. After a moment, she purged it from the system and initiated a security scan of her terminal. The scan came back clean, but that offered little comfort. Whoever had sent the message had managed to bypass standard communication protocols. Sleep evaded her that night as she lay awake, thoughts cycling between defensive strategies for the verification trials and the ominous warning she'd received. By morning, dark circles shadowed her eyes, but her resolve had hardened. She would not only prove her research valid, but would uncover whatever darker currents were flowing beneath the surface of Aegis 9. The verification team awaited her in Laboratory Chamber 12, a sterile environment typically reserved for high-security containment research. 3 scientists, representing different species, stood at the primary workstation. A prial biochemist, a draconid geneticist, and a quantum intelligence specialized in experimental verification. Dr. Marquez, the prial biochemist, greeted her with formal clicks of his mandibles. We have prepared identical conditions to your original experiment. You will observe, but not participate directly. Aaliyah nodded, taking position at the observation station. I understand. However, I should note that human tissue samples respond best to specific handling protocols that may not be in your standard procedures. We have studied your methodology thoroughly, the draconid geneticist rumbled, arranging her scaled hands over the sample container. The Council has authorized us to replicate your experiment precisely, including any unusual techniques you employed. The accusation in the word unusual was unmistakable. For the next 3 hours, Aaliyah watched as they meticulously recreated her experiment. They handled the human tissue samples with precision, applied the same controlled damage, and monitored the cellular response with equipment far more sensitive than what she'd used in her own lab. Initially, the results matched standard regeneration patterns. Nothing extraordinary. Aaliyah felt a creeping dread as the cellular activity remained within predicted parameters. Had her original results been a fluke? A contamination? Then, 26 minutes into the observation period, the tissue began to shimmer with increased metabolic activity. Energy output exceeding baseline by 340%, the quantum intelligence reported, its housing sphere pulsing rapidly. Impossible! The prill biochemist clicked, compound eyes fixed on the sample. Cellular division rate increasing exponentially. The draconid geneticist hissed softly. Mitochondrial activity unlike anything in our comparative database. Before their eyes, the damaged tissue regenerated completely, just as it had in Aaliyah's original experiment. The verification team fell into stunned silence, broken only by the soft beeping of the monitoring equipment. Would you like me to explain what you're seeing? Aaliyah asked quietly, unable to keep a note of vindication from her voice. The draconid geneticist turned to her, scaled brow ridges furrowed. This defies all established biophysical models. Only the models built without human physiology as a primary reference. Aaliyah corrected. Our cellular regeneration mechanisms evolved under different selective pressures than those of most galactic species. Or, the prial biochemist clicked ominously. Human tissue has been artificially enhanced. Genetic engineering, perhaps? Aaliyah stiffened. That's a serious accusation. Humanity signed the genetic preservation accords like every other member species. The quantum intelligence pulsed thoughtfully. Analysis indicates no artificial genetic markers. However, the regeneration pattern shows similarities to certain theoretical models of weaponized biology. Weaponized, Aaliyah echoed incredulously. We're talking about natural healing processes. Natural processes that exceed recovery rates of all documented species by orders of magnitude. The draconid noted. You must understand our concern, Dr. Marquez. Such capabilities could have implications. The unspoken subtext was clear. A species with such rapid regenerative capabilities might be considerably harder to kill, a fact of no small interest in a galaxy with a complex history of interspecies conflicts. I'm a scientist, not a weapons developer, Aaliyah said firmly. My research aims to understand these mechanisms so they might benefit all species, not just humans. The verification team exchanged glances, or what passed for glances among their varied physiologies. We will report our findings to the Council. The prill biochemist finally clicked. Your results have been verified, but this raises more questions than it answers. The investigation will continue on a broader scale. Aaliyah nodded, relieved that her results had been confirmed, but unsettled by the new direction of scrutiny. As she turned to leave, the draconid geneticist called after her. Dr. Marquez, one question, if I may. Aaliyah paused at the doorway. Yes? If human tissue can regenerate so efficiently, why do humans age and die as rapidly as they do? Why not apply this regenerative capability throughout the organism? The question struck at the heart of a paradox Aaliyah herself had pondered for years. That, she said quietly, is exactly what I'm trying to understand. As she walked away, she didn't notice the shadow that detached itself from a maintenance alcove and followed her at a discreet distance, a slim vitrin figure with a data collection device concealed in its palm. Later that day, in the bustling common area of Research Sector 5, Aaliyah sat alone at a food dispensation station, absently stirring a bowl of nutrient suspension calibrated for human dietary requirements. The bluish paste was technically a perfect balance of proteins, carbohydrates, and micronutrients. But after 3 years, she still couldn't convince herself it tasted like anything but slightly sweet chalk. "May I join you?" Aaliyah looked up to find Jax, a technical assistant from the xenobiology department. The Tekken's exoskeleton gleamed under the overhead lights, their 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a nervous habit. "Of course." Aaliyah gestured to the empty seat across from her. Jax settled awkwardly, their exoskeletal joints clicking. "I heard about your verification trial. Congratulations on the confirmation." Aaliyah smiled thinly. "Thanks. Though I'm not sure congratulations is the right word, when your colleagues immediately jump to suspicions of weapons development. Can you blame them?" Jax's antennae twitched. Most species would have leveraged such biological advantages for military applications. The draconids certainly did with their thermal resistance. "Humans aren't draconids," Aaliyah replied, then sighed. "But no, I can't blame them, especially given our complicated history with interspecies relations. Earth's entrance onto the galactic stage had been rocky at best. After centuries of isolation, humanity had finally developed rudimentary faster-than-light travel, only to discover they were latecomers to a complex political landscape of ancient civilizations and alliances. Their subsequent diplomatic missteps, born of ignorance rather than malice, had earned humans a reputation for being unpredictable and potentially dangerous. "I don't think you're developing weapons," Jax said quietly, leaning forward. "But I think someone on this station might be interested in weaponizing your research." Aaliyah's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "There have been irregularities in the specimen storage facilities, missing samples, unauthorized access during odd shift hours." Jax's voice dropped even lower. "Mostly human tissue samples." A chill ran down Aaliyah's spine as she recalled the anonymous message. "Have you reported this?" "To whom?" "The security chief is a vitrin, and—" Jax's antennae flattened against their head, a sign of extreme discomfort. "And you suspect vitrin involvement," Aaliyah finished for them. Jax didn't confirm verbally, but their posture was answer enough. "Why tell me this?" Aaliyah asked. "Because I've seen your work. You care about understanding, not exploitation." Jax's exoskeleton clicked as they shifted nervously. "And because I think you might be in danger. Whatever's happening, it started accelerating after your initial regeneration experiments." Aaliyah pushed her food away, appetite gone. "Thank you for the warning. I'll be careful." Jax stood to leave, then hesitated. "One more thing. The environmental systems in Laboratory Section 7 have been showing unusual patterns. Micro-fluctuations in the containment fields, power surges to the isolation chambers, as if someone's running unauthorized experiments." "Laboratory Section 7? That's Dr. Chin's primary research area." "I didn't say that," Jax said quickly. "I didn't say anything at all." With that, they hurried away, leaving Aaliyah alone with her cooling nutrient paste and growing sense of dread. That night, sleep eluded her again. She lay on her sleeping platform, staring at the ceiling as her mind raced through possibilities. If someone was stealing human tissue samples, What were they using them for? And why now? When her regeneration research had caught the attention of the entire station. The pieces began to align in her mind. Chin's too convenient offer of assistance. The warning message. Jax's information about missing samples. The Council's suspicions about weaponization potential. Whatever was happening went beyond academic rivalry or scientific skepticism. There were darker currents at work on Aegis 9. She needed evidence, not just suspicions. With sudden resolve, she rose from her bed and dressed in her standard uniform. At 0300 station time, most researchers would be in their rest cycles, leaving the laboratories minimally staffed. Using her authorized access codes, Aaliyah made her way to the central laboratory complex. As a department head, she had legitimate reasons to access most research areas, though her movements would still be logged in the station's security systems. She would need to be careful, curious but not suspicious. The corridors were dimly lit in the artificial night cycle, the living walls of the prial sections pulsing more slowly. She moved with purpose, as if conducting legitimate late-night research, nodding to the occasional security drone that hovered past. Laboratory Section 7 was ostensibly dedicated to comparative xenophysiology, the study of how different species' bodies functioned under various conditions. As Aaliyah approached, she noted that the security panel outside the main entrance showed active status, unusual for this time in the station's cycle. She hesitated, then decided on a direct approach. Using her department head credentials, she requested access. To her surprise, the door slid open without challenge. Either her credentials were sufficient, or someone wanted to create the illusion of normal operations. The main laboratory appeared standard, workstations arranged around a central analysis platform, specimen containers neatly organized on cooling racks. Nothing seemed immediately out of place. She moved deeper into the complex, past the primary research areas toward the specialized isolation chambers designed for hazardous biological materials. Here, she noticed the first anomaly. The environmental control panel for Isolation Chamber 3 showed active status, but the monitoring screens were dark. Someone had disabled the standard observation protocols while maintaining the chamber's functionality. A soft noise from within the chamber caught her attention, a rhythmic humming interspersed with mechanical clicks. The chamber door was sealed with a biometric lock, requiring vitrin physiology to access directly. However, as a safety measure, all isolation chambers had emergency observation ports, small, shielded windows that could be activated in case of system failure. Aaliyah located the manual override and activated the observation port. The reinforced transparency slid open, revealing the chamber's interior. What she saw made her blood run cold. Inside, arranged in precise rows, were dozens of cultivation tanks, each containing what appeared to be human tissue samples in various stages of development. Not simple cellular cultures, but complex organ structures, heart tissue, neural matter, liver cells, all pulsing with unnatural vitality under specialized nutrient baths. At the central workstation stood Dr. Chin, his back to the door, as he manipulated a complex array of surgical instruments. Before him lay something that made Aaliyah's stomach lurch, what appeared to be a small, partially formed humanoid figure. No larger than an infant, but with disproportionate features. Not a human child, but something engineered from human genetic material. As Chin shifted position, Aaliyah could see he was extracting tissue samples from the grotesque creation, carefully cataloging each specimen in labeled containment units. Horror and revulsion rose in her throat. This went beyond unethical research. This was biological desecration, a fundamental violation of every scientific and ethical principle the station supposedly upheld. She needed to document this, to gather evidence for the council. Slowly, carefully. She activated her personal data device and began recording through the observation port. For 3 excruciating minutes, she documented Chin's activities, capturing clear footage of the cultivation tanks, the engineered tissues, and the veteran doctor's methodical harvesting procedures. Then disaster struck. As she adjusted position to capture a better angle, her elbow brushed against a sample tray on a nearby workstation. The metallic tray clattered to the floor, the sound deafening in the quiet laboratory. Inside the chamber, Chin froze, then slowly turned toward the observation port. His reptilian eyes widened in shock, then narrowed in cold calculation when he saw Elia. For a moment, they stared at each other through the reinforced transparency. Human and Vitran. Researcher and abomination creator. Accuser and accused. Then, Chin moved with surprising speed, slamming his scaled hand against the chamber's internal emergency protocols. Alarms blared throughout the laboratory section as containment shields slammed down over all exits. Security breach in Laboratory Section 7. The station's automated system announced. Biohazard containment protocols activated. All personnel remain in place for decontamination procedures. Aaliyah knew what this meant. Chin had triggered a false biohazard alert. Standard procedure would bring security teams who would detain everyone present until the supposed threat was contained. By then, Chin would have time to dispose of evidence or, worse, create a plausible explanation for his monstrous work. She had only moments to act, clutching her data device with its damning footage. She sprinted for the laboratory's emergency evacuation route, a narrow maintenance access tunnel designed for use in genuine containment failures. As she ran, she could hear the hiss of the isolation chamber's door opening behind her. Chin would be in pursuit, and as a Vitran, his natural speed exceeded human capabilities. The evacuation tunnel was dimly lit with emergency indicators, barely wide enough for her to pass through in a crouched position. She moved as quickly as possible, listening for sounds of pursuit. Where could she go? Who could she trust with what she'd discovered? The council might believe her evidence, but getting to them through standard channels would be impossible now. Chin would have already reported her as a security risk. She needed an ally, someone with both the authority to protect her and the integrity to act on her evidence without political considerations. As she emerged from the maintenance tunnel into a secondary corridor, a plan began to form. There was one person on the station whose position might offer protection: Ambassador Thela, the Mieran diplomatic representative. Though not a scientist, Thela held authority equal to the Council in matters of interspecies relations. If Aaliyah could reach the diplomatic sector with her evidence intact, a noise behind her, the scrape of scales against metal, told her Chin had entered the maintenance tunnel. She abandoned stealth for speed, sprinting down the corridor toward the central hub that connected the research sectors to the diplomatic wing. The station's night cycle meant reduced staff throughout, but also fewer witnesses to her desperate flight. She passed occasional maintenance drones and night shift personnel who gave her curious glances, but didn't interfere. As she approached the central hub, she heard the unmistakable sound of security officers responding to Chin's alert, the heavy tread of armored boots, and the electronic chatter of communication devices. She ducked into a service alcove, pressing herself against the wall as a security team rushed past. 4 officers, 2 Draconid and 2 Prial, moving with purpose toward Laboratory Section 7. Once they passed, she slipped out and continued toward the diplomatic wing, now moving more cautiously. The diplomatic sector would have its own security protocols, potentially more difficult to navigate than the research areas where she had legitimate access. As she rounded the final corner before the diplomatic wing entrance, her heart sank. 2 veteran security officers stood at the checkpoint, their posture alert despite the late hour. Chin had anticipated her move and ensured his own species' representatives would be guarding potential escape routes. She retreated before they spotted her, mind racing. There had to be another way to reach Ambassador Thela, or someone else with authority. A soft chirp from her data device nearly made her jump. A message notification, text only, from an anonymous sender. Hydroponics Section 12, Storage Unit 7B, now. The same untraceable source as before. She hesitated, weighing her options. Trusting an anonymous message was risky, but her alternatives were rapidly disappearing as Chin mobilized station security against her. Hydroponics was 4 levels down, accessible via maintenance lifts without passing through major security checkpoints. It might offer temporary sanctuary while she determined her next move. Decision made. She changed direction, using service corridors to avoid main thoroughfares. The maintenance lift required only basic access credentials, which she still possessed despite whatever accusations Chin might be leveling against her. The hydroponic sections were vast, artificial environments where the station grew food for its diverse inhabitants. Section 12 specialized in non-photosynthesizing fungal analogs from the Miran home system. Dim, humid chambers, filled with phosphorescent growth beds that cast an eerie blue glow over everything. She moved carefully between the towering cultivation racks, the air thick with spores and the rich scent of growing medium. Storage Unit 7B was located at the far end of the section, a nondescript metal door set into the wall. As she approached, the door slid open automatically. She hesitated, then stepped through into a small antechamber. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss of pressurization. "You're later than expected, Dr. Marquez." The voice came from the shadows of an inner room. As her eyes adjusted, she made out a familiar figure, Jax, the technical assistant. "You sent the messages?" Elia asked, relief mingling with confusion. "Yes." Jax stepped forward, their exoskeleton gleaming dully in the low light. "We don't have much time. Dr. Chin has reported you for biological espionage and contamination of his research." "Contamination? He's creating monstrosities. Engineered human tissues? Hybrid organ systems?" Elia held up her data device. "I have evidence." "I know." Jax gestured to a communication console in the corner of the room. "That's why I arranged this. There's someone who needs to see what you've discovered." The console activated, revealing a holographic projection of a face Elia recognized immediately. Ambassador Thala, the Miran diplomatic representative. The ambassador's tendrils were arranged in a formal pattern, indicating serious official business. "Dr. Marquez." Thala's dual-toned voice resonated from the console. "I understand you have uncovered concerning activities within our research facilities." "Ambassador." Elia stepped forward, holding up her data device. "Dr. Chin Veros is conducting unauthorized experiments using human tissue samples. He's engineering complex biological structures with regenerative capabilities far beyond anything in my research. I believe he's developing biological weapons or unauthorized medical technologies for black market sale." The ambassador's tendrils shifted to a pattern Elia couldn't interpret. "These are serious accusations against a respected researcher. I will need to see your evidence." Jax moved to Elia's side. "We've established a secure connection. You can transfer the data directly to the ambassador's private server." Elia hesitated only briefly before connecting her device to the console. The data transfer took only seconds. Images and recordings of Chin's secret laboratory and its grotesque contents. Ambassador Thala was silent for several moments as she reviewed the evidence. When she spoke again, her voice had taken on a deeper resonance, a sign of profound concern in Miran communication. "This violates multiple provisions of the Intergalactic Biological Research Accords. The manipulation of sentient species' genetic material without consent for purposes of weapons development is classified as a Category 1 offense." "Then you believe me?" Elia asked, relief flooding through her. "The evidence is compelling," Thala acknowledged, tendrils now shifting to an administrative pattern. "However, we must proceed with caution. Dr. Chin has considerable influence within the Vitran scientific community, and direct accusations without proper procedure could create a diplomatic incident." "With respect, Ambassador," Elia said urgently. "While we follow procedures, Chin is destroying evidence and framing me as the perpetrator. By morning, there may be nothing left to prove what he's done. The ambassador's tendrils twisted in what might have been frustration. You are correct, Dr. Marquez. This requires immediate intervention. She turned her attention to Jax. Technical specialist, you have the emergency override sequences? Jax's antennae straightened in affirmation. Yes, Ambassador. Ready on your authorization. Execute Protocol Veridin 7, Thala commanded. Full security lockdown of Laboratory Section 7. Override Authority Diplomatic Code Thala 349 Epsilon. Jax moved to the console, exoskeletal fingers flying over the interface. Executing now. Lockdown in progress. Aaliyah watched in astonishment. You had this planned. How long have you known about Chin's experiments? We suspected, Thala corrected, but lacked definitive evidence. Your regeneration research accelerated his timeline, forcing him to take risks. Jax has been monitoring unusual resource allocations and power fluctuations for months. But without cause for official investigation, we could only watch and wait. Lockdown complete, Jax reported. Laboratory Section 7 is sealed. Security teams redirected to containment positions only. No entry authorized without diplomatic override. What now? Elia asked. Now, Ambassador Thala said, her holographic image leaning forward. We wake the Council for an emergency session. You will present your evidence directly, without Chin's interference. Jax will escort you to the diplomatic sector, via secure routes. I will meet you there. The plan was set in motion with practiced efficiency that suggested this was not the first time the ambassador had dealt with such situations. Jax led Aaliyah through a network of maintenance tunnels and secondary corridors, bypassing the main security checkpoints where Chin might have positioned allies. They emerged into the diplomatic sector 30 minutes later, where Ambassador Thala awaited them with a small contingent of Mieran security personnel, their translucent blue forms imposing despite their seemingly delicate structures. The council has been convened, Thala informed them. They await us in Emergency Chamber 1. Unlike the formal council chamber where Elia had been questioned earlier, Emergency Chamber 1 was a stark, functional space designed for crisis management. The 5 council members were already present, their varied physiologies betraying signs of interrupted rest cycles and confusion. Chairman Zoth's compound eyes fixed on Aaliyah as she entered. Dr. Marquez, you have caused considerable disruption to station operations. Ambassador Thala claims you have evidence of serious violations requiring immediate council attention. I do. Chairman. Elia stepped forward, determination overcoming her exhaustion. With your permission, I will present what I discovered in Laboratory Section 7 under Dr. Chin Varos's authority. The council members exchanged glances as Ambassador Thala took position beside Aaliyah in a show of diplomatic support. Proceed, Zoth clicked, mandibles twitching with what might have been anxiety. For the next 20 minutes, Aaliyah methodically presented her evidence, the recordings from Chin's laboratory, the unauthorized tissue cultivation, the engineered human-derived biological structures. She explained how her legitimate regeneration research had apparently accelerated Chin's illicit activities, forcing him to take greater risks that ultimately led to his discovery. The council's reactions ranged from the Draconid representative's hissing outrage to the quantum intelligence's rapid, agitated pulsing. The Vitrin representative remained conspicuously silent, silver skin dimming to a dull gray, a sign of extreme distress or embarrassment in their species. When Aaliyah concluded her presentation, the chamber fell silent for several moments. Finally, Chairman Zoth spoke, his clicking language more pronounced in his agitation. These allegations are deeply disturbing. If verified, they represent the most serious breach of research ethics in the station's history. They have been verified, Ambassador Thala interjected smoothly. My security team has already secured Laboratory Section 7 and conducted preliminary documentation of its contents. The evidence matches Dr. Marquez's account in all significant aspects. The Vitran representative finally spoke. Voice subdued. The Vitran Collective does not sanction such research. If Dr. Veros has indeed conducted these experiments, he has done so in violation of our most sacred scientific principles. Yet he operated with Vitran security personnel at his disposal. The Draconid representative rumbled skeptically. Convenient that they were positioned to intercept Dr. Marquez at key locations. An investigation into potential accomplices will be conducted, Thala assured them. However, our immediate concern must be the containment of any biological hazards and the security of the station. The quantum intelligence pulsed in a pattern, indicating agreement. Priority assessment. Immediate neutralization of unauthorized biological constructs. Secondary. Full accounting of all human tissue samples and derived materials. Tertiary. Investigation of distribution networks for potential black market connections. Chairman Zoth's compound eyes swiveled to Aaliyah. Dr. Marquez, the Council owes you an apology. Your regeneration research was legitimate, while our suspicions were misdirected. It appears that Dr. Veros saw in your work an opportunity to accelerate his own illicit activities. I appreciate that, Chairman, Elia said. But my concern is ensuring that human biological material is not exploited or weaponized. The regenerative capabilities I've documented are meant to advance medical science, not create biological threats. A noble sentiment, the Draconid representative acknowledged. Though one must wonder if all your species would share such restraint, given access to the same knowledge. The barb stung, but Aaliyah refused to be provoked. The same could be said of any species, which is why we establish ethical frameworks and oversight bodies like this council. Ambassador Thala's tendrils shifted in what Aaliyah recognized as approval. Well said, Dr. Marquez. Now, with the council's permission, I suggest we proceed with securing Dr. Veros and initiating a full containment protocol for his laboratory. Chairman Zoth rose to his full height, towering over the assembly. Agreed. Security teams will apprehend Dr. Veros. The laboratory contents will be documented and then destroyed under council supervision. Dr. Marquez's original regeneration research will continue with appropriate oversight, but without the previous restrictions. As the council members dispersed to implement these decisions, Ambassador Thala drew Elia aside. You have shown remarkable courage, Doctor, the Mieran said quietly. Few would risk their professional standing against someone of Dr. Veros's influence. I couldn't stand by while he perverted everything science should stand for, Elia replied, the exhaustion of the past hours finally catching up with her. But I'm concerned about the wider implications. If Chin was developing these things for sale, who were his buyers, and how many samples might have already left the station? Thala's tendrils drooped slightly, a sign of troubled thoughts. Valid concerns. The investigation will continue beyond Aegis 9. The black market for advanced biological technologies spans multiple systems, and Vitran smuggling networks are notoriously difficult to penetrate. And what about my research? Elia asked. The Council may have lifted restrictions, but after this incident, how will human regenerative capabilities be viewed? As a medical breakthrough, or as a potential threat? That, Ambassador Thala said thoughtfully, may depend largely on how you choose to proceed with your work. Perception often matters as much as reality in interspecies relations. The ambassador's words stayed with Aaliyah as she finally returned to her quarters, physically and mentally exhausted, but unable to rest. The events of the night had fundamentally altered the trajectory of her work, and potentially the perception of human biology throughout galactic scientific circles. She activated her personal terminal and began composing a new research proposal, one that would position human regenerative capabilities as a shared resource for medical advancement rather than a unique advantage to be guarded or feared. If the galactic community saw humanity's illogical biology as a gift rather than a threat, it might help bridge the lingering distrust that had shadowed interspecies relations since Earth's awkward entrance onto the galactic stage. As she worked, the station's systems cycled gradually from night to day, the lighting shifting to mimic the diurnal patterns that most biological entities evolved with. Reports filtered in through official channels. Chin had been apprehended, attempting to access a private shuttle bay. His laboratory had been fully secured, its contents cataloged for evidence before scheduled destruction. A message notification appeared on her terminal, from Jax, the technical assistant, whose monitoring had helped expose Chin's activities. Preliminary analysis of Chin's records indicates distribution to 3 black market research facilities in the Outer Rim territories. Regulatory enforcement agencies have been notified. The station will be conducting a full audit of all biological sample storage and tracking systems. Your assistance has been requested for the human tissue protocols review. So it had already spread beyond the station. The implications were troubling, but at least action was being taken. Aaliyah sent a brief acknowledgement, confirming her willingness to assist with the audit. 3 days later, Aaliyah stood before the full council again, this time not as a suspect, but as a consultant. The intervening days had been a whirlwind of activity: security debriefings, evidence cataloging, and the methodical destruction of Chin's grotesque creations. The veteran doctor himself had been remanded to his species authorities for trial under their biological ethics laws, which were notoriously severe. Dr. Marquez, Chairman Zoth began, his tone considerably warmer than during their previous encounter. The Council has reviewed your proposed research framework for the Human Regenerative Medicine Initiative. We find it promising. Aaliyah inclined her head in acknowledgement. Thank you, Chairman. However, the Draconid representative interjected. Certain aspects require additional safeguards. The regenerative capabilities you've documented, while impressive for medical applications, retain potential for alternative uses. I understand your concerns, Aaliyah responded carefully. That's why my proposal includes multi-species oversight and transparent research protocols. The regenerative mechanisms aren't just a human asset. They're a potential breakthrough for all biological entities. The quantum intelligence pulsed thoughtfully. Analysis indicates 72.3% probability of successful medical applications across minimum 4 major species groups within decade timeframe. Risk assessment indicates manageable security concerns with proposed oversight framework. What assurances can you provide? The Vitran representative asked, their silver skin still dimmed with embarrassment over their species' involvement in the scandal. That human authorities will abide by the same restrictions we impose here? Your species' governance is fragmented. It was a fair question, if pointed. Earth's political landscape remained a complex patchwork of nations and alliances, lacking the unified governance structures of many older galactic civilizations. The Terran Scientific Consortium has ratified the same ethical frameworks as this council, Elia answered. Any research conducted on Earth would be subject to identical restrictions and oversight. Additionally, I've proposed establishing a permanent multi-species monitoring committee with representatives from each council species. Ambassador Thala, present as an observer, nodded approvingly. Chairman Zoth's compound eyes focused on Aaliyah with unsettling intensity. One final question, Dr. Marquez. Given what you now know about the potential for misuse of your research, would you choose to continue this work, or would caution suggest abandonment of the entire line of inquiry? The question cut to the heart of the ethical dilemma Aaliyah had wrestled with since discovering Chin's laboratory. Knowledge, once gained, could not be unlearned. The potential benefits of understanding human regeneration were enormous. Extended lifespans, recovery from injuries that would otherwise be permanent, treatments for degenerative conditions. But the same knowledge, in the wrong hands, could create bioweapons, unauthorized genetic modifications, or worse. "I believe we must continue," she said firmly. "Not despite the risks, but because of them. If we abandon legitimate research out of fear, we create a vacuum that will be filled by those with fewer ethical constraints. By pursuing this work openly, transparently, and collaboratively, we establish the standards by which it will be judged. We demonstrate that advancement doesn't require secrecy or exploitation." The council members exchanged glances, or their species equivalents of such communication. A thoughtful response. Chairman Zoth finally clicked. "The council approves your proposed framework, with the amendments suggested by our members. You may proceed with the establishment of the Human Regenerative Medicine Initiative under joint oversight." Relief and a renewed sense of purpose flooded through Aaliyah. "Thank you, Chairman. I won't disappoint your trust." As the formal session concluded, Ambassador Thala approached her. "A significant achievement, Dr. Marquez. Few researchers successfully establish new initiatives after such dramatic circumstances." "I had help," Elia acknowledged. "Your intervention was crucial." The ambassador's tendrils arranged themselves in a pattern of modest deflection. "I merely facilitated the discovery of truth. The value of your research speaks for itself." She paused, her normally smooth, dual-toned voice hesitating slightly. "There is something else you should know, something not included in the official reports." Aaliyah tensed. "What is it?" The final analysis of Chin's research notes revealed his ultimate objective. He wasn't merely developing black-market medical technologies or bioweapons. He was attempting to engineer a virus that would trigger the same regenerative response in non-human tissues. "That's theoretically fascinating, but practically impossible." Elia frowned. "The cellular mechanisms are too species-specific. Perhaps." Thala's tendrils twisted in uncertainty. But his last experimental series showed promising results in vitrin tissue samples. Preliminary regeneration rates increased by 47% when exposed to engineered retroviruses derived from human genetic material. The implications were staggering. If Chin had been close to success, it would explain the black market interest. Species across the galaxy would pay fortunes for enhanced regenerative capabilities that humans apparently possessed naturally. "Why tell me this?" Elia asked quietly. "This information could derail my initiative before it begins." "Because you deserve to understand the full scope of what you're dealing with," Thala replied. "The Council believes the knowledge is too dangerous to be included in public records. But as the primary researcher, you should be aware of the potential." Elia nodded slowly, the weight of responsibility settling more heavily on her shoulders. "Thank you for trusting me with this." "Trust is the foundation of advancement," the ambassador said simply. "Now, I believe you have a research team to assemble." In the months that followed, the Human Regenerative Medicine Initiative took shape under Alia's direction. Researchers from 12 species joined the project, each bringing unique perspectives and expertise. The work progressed methodically, with every discovery subjected to rigorous ethical review and security protocols. 6 months after Chin's arrest, Alia stood in Laboratory Chamber 1, now redesignated as the initiative's primary research facility, watching as a holographic display showed real-time cellular regeneration in a controlled environment. "The mitochondrial enhancement sequence is holding stable," reported Nixley, who had remained as her research assistant despite offers to join more prestigious projects. "Cellular energy output is 23% above baseline, within predicted parameters." "Excellent," Elia smiled. "Let's proceed with the comparative analysis. How do the draconid samples respond to the modified protocol?" As Nixley adjusted the experimental parameters, Jax entered the laboratory, their exoskeleton now bearing the insignia of the station's newly established Biological Security Division. "Dr. Marquez, do you have a moment?" Aaliyah nodded to Nixley to continue the experiment and stepped aside with Jax. "What is it?" "We've received intelligence from the Regulatory Enforcement Division. They've intercepted a shipment of biological materials bound for the Outer Rim. Analysis confirms they originated from Dr. Varos's laboratory before his arrest." A cold knot formed in Aaliyah's stomach. "What kind of materials?" "Engineered viral vectors, similar to what Ambassador Thala described. They appear to be early-stage prototypes, lacking the sophistication of his later work, but still potentially dangerous in the wrong hands." "Were they viable?" "Partially. The containment procedures during transport degraded approximately 60% of the samples, but the remainder could theoretically be cultured to produce more." Aaliyah considered the implications. "Have you informed the Council?" "They've been notified. Chairman Zoth has called for increased security measures around all regenerative medicine research, but he specifically stated that your initiative should continue without interruption. The chairman believes that legitimate research is the best defense against black market exploitation." Aaliyah nodded slowly. "He's right. Understanding is always preferable to ignorance, especially when facing threats like this." She glanced back at the laboratory where her team continued their work, a diverse collection of the galaxy's finest minds, united in the pursuit of knowledge that could benefit all species. "We'll need to accelerate our safety protocols development. If Qin's viral vectors are in circulation, we need countermeasures." "I'll assign additional security specialists to your team," Jax offered. "Thank you." Elia turned back to the experiment, where Nixley was now recording results with methodical precision. "We'll continue our work. The potential benefits are too important to abandon out of fear." As Jax departed, Aaliyah returned to the central research platform, a renewed sense of purpose driving her forward. The human body's illogical regenerative capabilities had drawn her to this research initially, a scientific curiosity that had evolved into something far more significant. What had once seemed terrifying, the inexplicable aspects of human physiology that defied conventional biological models, now represented hope, not just for humans, but potentially for all sentient species. Understanding would replace fear, cooperation would overcome suspicion, and the shared pursuit of knowledge would forge connections across the divisions of biology and culture. The path forward would not be easy. Qin's actions had cast a shadow over the research, and the black market interest in human regenerative capabilities posed ongoing security concerns. But with proper safeguards and transparent protocols, the work would continue. As Aaliyah watched the cellular regeneration patterns unfold on the holographic display, human and non-human tissues responding to carefully calibrated stimuli, she felt a profound sense of vindication. What had begun as a defense of her research integrity had evolved into something far more significant. A bridge between species, built on the foundation of shared scientific discovery. Nothing about human bodies made sense by conventional galactic standards. Their regenerative capabilities defied established biological models. Their cellular structures operated on principles that seemed counterintuitive to non-human scientists. But in that very illogic lay the potential for advancement that would benefit all sentient beings. The terrifying had become the transformative, and as Aaliyah directed her diverse team of researchers toward their next breakthrough, she embraced both the responsibility and the promise of the journey ahead.